Welcome to Eternal Dread, where fear never sleeps. Tell us where you're watching from, and what time it is, because terror has no limits. If you're brave enough, share and comment, but beware, something might be watching you too. Now, turn off the lights, and let the dread begin. I still get chills whenever I think about that house. Honestly, part of me wonders if sharing this will help me finally sleep better, or maybe it'll just make it worse. Either way, I need to get this off my chest. Growing up, my brother and I had this weird fascination with old houses. You know, the ones with peeling wallpaper, dusty rooms, that stale smell that hits you the moment you walk in. We used to sneak into abandoned houses in the old part of town just to see what was left behind, and I swear those afternoons shaped the rest of our lives. We ended up going all in on this obsession, forming our own little paranormal investigation team, convinced that ghosts weren't just TV gimmicks. I remember that night, the call that changed everything just like it happened yesterday. It was the beginning of October and cold already, the kind where the wind literally howls outside like a scene straight out of a horror movie. We were at the dining room table with our usual setup, our laptops, case files, leftover pizza. That's when the phone rang. On the other end, there was a woman who sounded terrified. She kept talking about strange noises and moving objects in her house on the edge of town. My heart started pounding because something about her voice I don't know, it felt real. More real than anything we'd dealt with before. Now, her old Victorian house wasn't exactly a secret. Locals talked about it. Supposedly, it was haunted with all sorts of creepy legends. If you ever drove by it, you couldn't miss the sagging porch or the shutters rattling in the wind. We loaded up our gear into the van and headed over, half excited, half terrified. It was already dark by the time we got there. The place gave me that feeling. The feeling like the air was heavier, like we were walking into something we couldn't just walk out of. My brother parked the van and rattled off what the homeowner, Evelyn, had told him on the phone. Objects moving, cold spots, whispers. The usual, he said, trying to sound unimpressed, but I could see that flicker of excitement in his eyes. I tried to keep my own voice steady as I checked my notes. She'd mentioned not sleeping for weeks. My gut twisted. I couldn't shake the sense we were messing with something bigger than us. The wind nearly tore the sound of our knock right off the door. When it finally opened, this frail, elderly woman stood there. You could see fear on her face. Her hands trembled as she thanked us for coming, and something about her eyes made me want to turn around and run back to the safety of the van. But we went in. Inside, the house felt off. The smell of old books clung to everything, mixed with something else I couldn't quite place, maybe lavender, maybe something older. Dust covered the furniture like no one had touched it in decades. The ticking of a grandfather clock in the hallway was so loud in the silence, it made me jump. We set up our equipment as she told us her story. Whispers in the night, things moving on their own, that awful feeling of being watched even when she was supposedly alone. We split up and started investigating. Temperature drops, weird shadows darting in the corners of our flashlights. It was like the house wanted to show us it was alive, or something else entirely. In one cramped study, our recorder picked up a quiet whisper, so faint I almost thought I imagined it. But when we played it back, it clearly said, "Leave." We asked Evelyn if anyone had died in the house, or if there'd been any other horrible thing that happened there. She insisted she didn't know of anything. My brother reassured her we'd review everything, then come back with answers. She looked so relieved, but also not at the same time, like she'd been living with this forever. Afterwards, we spent a few days hunched over our dining room table, analyzing every piece of footage. We had temperature readings plummeting for no reason, EMF spikes, faint whispers we couldn't explain. But here's the weird part. Every time Evelyn was supposed to be on camera, like if she was pointing at something moving, she just wasn't there in the footage. My brother and I tried to brush it off as some weird camera angle. But I knew it was wrong, it made no sense. So naturally, of course, we went back. When we pulled up, the old house looked totally different, fresh paint, no sagging porch or broken shutters. We thought it was the wrong house, but the address was the same. I didn't want to, but my brother wanted to see it through. When we knocked, a younger woman answered, looking at us like we were trying to sell something. I asked for Evelyn, and that's when my entire world flipped upside down. She told us Evelyn died decades ago. She was her great-aunt, the same woman we'd literally just spoken to a week earlier. My brother and I must have looked like we were going insane. We tried to argue and said we'd just been there, but the new homeowner's expression shifted from annoyance to something sad. like she knew more than she was telling us. We left, rattled. Back home, we double-checked the property's records, anything we could find. There it was in plain black and white, an obituary for Evelyn from years ago. I swear my heart stopped for a second. Then I found an old photograph of the house in its prime. There she was right in the middle picture along with everyone else, including the staff. The caption below listing the names of the people in the picture confirmed that it was her. Later I found another clipping. Her death wasn't natural. They didn't spell it out, but it was definitely tragic. We pored over our footage again, searching for answers. The more we looked, the more apparent it became. Evelyn wasn't visible on any video. Not a shadow, not a silhouette, nothing. Anytime we thought we'd caught a glimpse, the frame would just distort, like she was there but also not there. We found that same whisper again, leave, repeated over and over. Anyway, that's my story. Maybe I'm hoping someone reading this might have an explanation that'll finally make it easier to sleep at night. All I know is that if you ever find yourself drawn to old houses and the ghosts of the past, be careful what you wish for. Because sometimes the past is all too eager to talk back. I still get chills whenever I think about that house. Honestly, part of me wonders if sharing this will help me finally sleep better, or maybe it'll just make it worse. Either way, I need to get this off my chest. Growing up, my brother and I had this weird fascination with old houses. You know, the ones with peeling wallpaper, dusty rooms, that stale smell that hits you the moment you walk in. We used to sneak into abandoned houses in the old part of town just to see what was left behind, and I swear those afternoons shaped the rest of our lives. We ended up going all in on this obsession, forming our own little paranormal investigation team, convinced that ghosts weren't just TV gimmicks. I remember that night, the call that changed everything just like it happened yesterday. It was the beginning of October and cold already, the kind where the wind literally howls outside like a scene straight out of a horror movie. We were at the dining room table with our usual setup, our laptops, case files, leftover pizza. That's when the phone rang. On the other end, there was a woman who sounded terrified. She kept talking about strange noises and moving objects in her house on the edge of town. My heart started pounding because something about her voice just, I don't know, it felt real. More real than anything we'd dealt with before. Now, her old Victorian house wasn't exactly a secret. Locals talked about it. Supposedly, it was haunted with all sorts of creepy legends. If you ever drove by it, you couldn't miss the sagging porch or the shutters rattling in the wind. We loaded up our gear into the van and headed over, half excited, half terrified. It was already dark by the time we got there. The place gave me that feeling. The feeling like the air was heavier, like we were walking into something we couldn't just walk out of. My brother parked the van and rattled off what the homeowner, Evelyn, had told him on the phone. Objects moving, cold spots, whispers. The usual, he said, trying to sound unimpressed, but I could see that flicker of excitement in his eyes. I tried to keep my own voice steady as I checked my notes. She'd mentioned not sleeping for weeks. My gut twisted. I couldn't shake the sense we were messing with something bigger than us. The wind nearly tore the sound of our knock right off the door. When it finally opened, this frail, elderly woman stood there. You could see fear on her face. Her hands trembled as she thanked us for coming, and something about her eyes made me want to turn around and run back to the safety of the van. But we went in. Inside, the house felt off. The smell of old books clung to everything, mixed with something else I couldn't quite place, maybe lavender, maybe something older. Dust covered the furniture like no one had touched it in decades. The ticking of a grandfather clock in the hallway was so loud in the silence, it made me jump. We set up our equipment as she told us her story. Whispers in the night, things moving on their own, that awful feeling of being watched even when she was supposedly alone. We split up and started investigating. Temperature drops, weird shadows darting in the corners of our flashlights. It was like the house wanted to show us it was alive, or something else entirely. In one cramped study, our recorder picked up a quiet whisper, so faint I almost thought I imagined it. But when we played it back, it clearly said, "Leave." We asked Evelyn if anyone had died in the house, or if there'd been any other horrible thing that happened there. She insisted she didn't know of anything. My brother reassured her we'd review everything, then come back with answers. She looked so relieved, but also not at the same time, like she'd been living with this forever. Afterwards, we spent a few days hunched over our dining room table, analyzing every piece of footage. We had temperature readings plummeting for no reason, EMF spikes, faint whispers we couldn't explain. But here's the weird part. Every time Evelyn was supposed to be on camera, like if she was pointing at something moving, she just wasn't there in the footage. My brother and I tried to brush it off as some weird camera angle. But I knew it was wrong, it made no sense. So naturally, of course, we went back. When we pulled up, the old house looked totally different, fresh paint, no sagging porch or broken shutters. We thought it was the wrong house, but the address was the same. I didn't want to, but my brother wanted to see it through. When we knocked, a younger woman answered, looking at us like we were trying to sell something. I asked for Evelyn, and that's when my entire world flipped upside down. She told us Evelyn died decades ago. She was her great-aunt, the same woman we'd literally just spoken to a week earlier. My brother and I must have looked like we were going insane. We tried to argue and said we'd just been there, but the new homeowner's expression shifted from annoyance to something sad, like she knew more than she was telling us. We left, rattled. Back home, we double-checked the property's records, anything we could find. There it was in plain black and white, an obituary for Evelyn from years ago. I swear my heart stopped for a second. Then I found an old photograph of the house in its prime. There she was right in the middle picture along with everyone else, including the staff. The caption below listing the names of the people in the picture confirmed that it was her. Later I found another clipping. Her death wasn't natural. They didn't spell it out, but it was definitely tragic. We pored over our footage again, searching for answers. The more we looked, the more apparent it became. Evelyn wasn't visible on any video. Not a shadow, not a silhouette, nothing. Anytime we thought we'd caught a glimpse, the frame would just distort, like she was there but also not there. We found that same whisper again, leave, repeated over and over. Anyway, that's my story. Maybe I'm hoping someone reading this might have an explanation that'll finally make it easier to sleep at night. All I know is that if you ever find yourself drawn to old houses and the ghosts of the past, be careful what you wish for. Because sometimes the past is all too eager to talk back. When my manager offered me extra shifts last week, I said yes without hesitation. I don't do much in the evenings, and I could use the extra cash. Get Nadia to show you round the play center before you leave today, said Craig. Nadia's my co-worker. The soft play center is her patch. Most jobs at the leisure center take 2, maybe 3 hours at most, but Nadia rarely got away before 10 each night. My tongue was already in knots. Sorry, would it be okay if I got here for like 5 p.m.? He gave a smiling nod. Nadia doesn't usually start the clean till 6. I thanked him again. Good manners make up for all the times I'd taken his instructions way too literally. Craig's been much more tolerant with me than other bosses. His slow, plodding steps and thick Blackpool accent made it hard to feel afraid of him. See how you like it? He fell in step beside me as I continued down the corridor to find my colleague. I thought he was making a joke and tried to laugh. I'm probably a bit old for soft play. He laughed. No, I meant the cleaning shift. Oh, of course. It's a very different job from cleaning the gym. But if you like it, you could maybe take these hours on for good. Is Nadia leaving? Craig gave a slow shrug. She's off on holiday this week. We'll see what happens after that. Thanks, sweetheart. I liked Nadia. We didn't know each other that well, but I'd only ever had kindly smiles from her, and she never seemed annoyed when I asked for help. What's more, I always thought that she kind of looked like Mary from Silent Hill. Eventually I found her in the cleaning cupboard, twirling her earphones round her finger. Sorry. At the sound of my voice, she let out a stifled gasp. I smiled an apology. I should have knocked. She stared at me, wide-eyed, for a second or so, waiting for her brain to process whose face she was looking at. Oh, she laid her hand on my arm. Sorry, honey, sorry. And no worries. Craig says you're off tomorrow? She nodded. I'm covering your shifts this week, I continued. Just wondered if you had a second to show me how you clean the soft play sometime this morning? Nadia looked at me in silence for a minute. It made me feel a little awkward. Had I offended her? Craig asked you to cover me? Yeah, I smiled. Her eyes grew wider. I felt myself wilt. I guess she thought I wasn't competent, but was too nice to admit it. Uh-huh. She shook her head and stuck her phone back in her pocket, leaving the earphones trailing. Ushering me out, she smiled hard. I start upstairs. The experience of that first walk-around was one of nostalgia. The faded walls, the gaudy illustrations of cartoon animals, and the playful shadows cast by snaking slides and sprawling ball pits were precisely as I remembered them. The sickly smell of birthday cake and vomit inspired in me a wave of memories. As we plodded round the parents' cafe, I could almost see Mum sipping tea at the corner table, like some disconsolate prisoner. I felt my brother's spirit running to the rope swing that dangled barely half a foot from the cushioned floor. Even the squeak of Nadia's trainers against the spongy green floor was tinged with childhood. I remembered every lonely moment, playing by myself at the back while the other kids giggled behind me. I don't mop every day. Nadia's voice brought me back from reverie. Oh, that's good. Only once or twice a week. Or when someone spilled juice. I was glad to hear it. At the back of the soft play, the dimly lit corridors wound left and right without any discernible pattern. We passed a solitary waste bin. Shaped like an anthropomorphic beetle, its sordid smile betrayed 10 years' grime. We changed the bins too, right? I asked, when the silence had lasted a little too long between us. If you want, Nadia turned to me. We're not technically meant to start clean down until 6 p.m., but I try and sneak in here at 5. That way I'm not here after dark. I imagine it's a bit spooky after dark, back here. I meant it as a joke, but Nadia took me seriously. You don't have to stay the whole 3 hours, you know. Her heavy tone caught me off guard, but as I studied her face, I saw her features bore a strange, almost protective quality. Just make sure you don't hang around if you don't need to. It doesn't take a whole 3 hours. And if you feel weird about being here alone, just lock up and get out. Okay. I was touched. Thanks. She held my gaze. It was as though she wanted me to say something more, but I couldn't think of anything to say that wouldn't sound contrived. Still, she added at last, don't put yourself at risk. It's not worth it. My first shift was that night. I got to the sports center just before 5 and got a Red Bull from the vending machine. Before I went any further, I pulled my earphones carefully over my head. The long, strip-lit corridor has that hard, vinyl flooring that makes footsteps offensively loud. I pattered past the disused lockers and the old squash courts until I reached the door emblazoned. Tunnelwig Play Center. I swiped my card and opened the door. As it was nearly closing, a handful of kids were visible through the rope mesh that separated the play center from the parents' cafe. A tired-looking young woman called her child from one of the tables as the supervisor appeared behind the counter. She was tall and blonde, maybe 28 or 29 years old, and very pretty. Hey, she flashed me a sunny smile. Hello, I mumbled. I too early to get started? Where's Nadia? She's on holiday. Oh, you're covering? Uh-huh. The sound of my voice was egregious to me. She nodded over to the cafe. Would you mind getting started over there, please? Someone's just wee-weed on the floor. My attraction to her died that instant. I filled my bucket full of lemon soap and hot water before dragging it over to the pool of wee-wee. I finished up the floor and got started in the cafe, sweeping crumbs off tables, wiping down chairs, before running the shitty Henry Hoover over the sticky floor. It was nearly 8:30 when I got done, and all the play center staff had left. I sighed. I was so tired, and the constant smell of nappies grated on my senses. Waiting for me upstairs was the wreckage of a birthday party. Garish cellophane and disheveled party hats were strewn over the floor. I crouched down and crawled inside the jungle gym itself. Cake crumbs and sticky fingerprints were smeared across the interlocking foam flooring and walls. I cleared as much as I could, before shuffling back out of the cramped tunnel to empty the pan. It takes a lot to gross me out these days. What I noticed in the pan didn't gross me out as such, but gave me pause. Amidst the party crumbs was a single strand of human hair. There's nothing abnormal in that. Kids pull each other's hair out all the time. The weird thing is that this hair was silver. Wrinkling my nose, I lowered the dustpan into the cafe bin. Someone's grandma must have followed their grandchild into the squishy tunnel and got stuck. Maybe they had smuggled in some red wine to pass the time, while their infant threw themselves at other kids and into ball pits for hours. It must have been a very small old lady who could fit in there. Once the crumbs were clear, I shuffled back out of the tunnel. It wasn't easy. Even at 5'5", I was too long for the environment and ended up back crawling out of the warren like a fat badger. The soft plays cushions were warm to the touch, but it was freezing in the cafe area. I pulled my jacket closer over my uniform. If the janitors had turned the central heating off, I was probably the only person left on site. I never thought I cared about working late, but the idea of the empty swimming pools and miles of deserted corridors gave me a creepy feeling. I'd never been at the leisure center this late before. Maybe that's why my soul left my body when I caught sight of a leering face out of the corner of my eyes. It was, of course, only the beetle bin, its plastic mouth incapable of anything more than a shit-eating grin. Laughing, I sauntered over to it and produced another cloth from my pocket. I sprayed the synthetic cheek with blue window cleaning fluid and scrubbed coffee spots off the white cast teeth. Why would they put this in a kid's play center? Don't get me wrong, the hideous, sordid creature was probably charming when it was new. In its present state, only Russ McCamey would choose it for furniture. The sleazy effect was not helped by the slogan slapped on the wall above in yellow bubble writing. Can you find the tunnel wig? I fucking hope not. I finished polishing the bin and reached to unscrew its gray head. I carefully held my breath as I ducked close to its mouth to prevent the damp, rotten smell of the rubbish from invading my senses. It did not. I jumped back from the beetle bin. Its many limbs were fixed in a perpetual shrug. You get used to freaky stenches when you clean for a living, but this smell was different. Think sickly sweet birthday cake frosting, mixed with banana peels and those button mushrooms that languish at the bottom of the vegetable drawer. Think mold furring on apples, or a Halloween pumpkin left out in the rain until January. What the hell were they putting in there? I peered at the bin with renewed caution. It probably hadn't been changed in months. I double-gloved my hands and craned my neck back as I reached forward to carefully unscrew the beetle's head. Had someone brought their hamster in, only for it to escape and die at the bottom of the barrel? It smelled too sweet to be a carcass, but as I inched closer and closer to the beetle bin, I reconsidered. Sweaty hands closed round suppurating peaches. A stomach distended from a manic binge. The devil's smoothie. It actually made my head swim as I placed my hands on the beetle's smiling cheeks and slowly unscrewed the top. The black plastic rustled, and a waft of death assaulted my senses. I turned my nose away, pressed my lips together, and coiled the bin bag closed around my finger. Slowly, I lifted it, only to find that the liner was stuck to the bin's bottom. Whatever was making the unholy smell had leaked through the plastic and solidified. Oh God! I gingerly shook the bin to loosen it, to no avail. No wonder Nadia never changes it, I thought. They should just chuck this in a skip. It was too far behind the cafe area to get proper use anyway, yet I could not, in good conscience, neglect my duties by leaving the spoiled bag in situ. Kids use this space. Whatever was in the bag, it wasn't safe. Besides, I didn't want Nadia to think I had half-arsed it, or Craig, for that matter. Come on, I whispered, half to the beetle and half to myself. That was when I felt it, a sharp, piercing stinging on the back of my clenched palm. It was acute, like a dog bite, but as I pulled my hand away with a cry, it oozed until my whole hand throbbed. What the fuck? I staggered back, pressing hard on my hand that shrieked in pain. I lifted my fingers for a second to see if my skin was broken. I turned my hand over, then back again, looking for a welt or a cut. Not only was there no blood, but there was no mark to be seen at all. Worse still was the feeling that succeeded, a cold, prickly realization like sweat breaking on my brow, that I was not alone. My nerve broke like a twig beneath my feet. I kicked the Hoover back into the cleaning cupboard, grabbed my cleaning caddy, and hurried out of there. I thundered down the stairs and back into the reception bay, before jamming the key code in and throwing back the door. I didn't stop running until I got to the cloakroom. Just as I pulled my bag over my shoulder, I realized how absurd the whole thing was. I stood there, panting, and checking my hand over again. Nothing. I sighed, and trudged back to reception to clock out. I scribbled something down in the incident book. If there was some kind of biting bug infestation in the beetle bin, there was no way the play center was fit for public use. Perhaps the closing mechanism on the lid was rusted, and my hand had caught on the hinge. That explained it. The stench. Well, that would be gone as soon as the janitor team saw my note in the maintenance book. They'd just cart the bin off and hurl it in the landfill, where it belonged. As for the creepy feeling, that was me, I thought, just being a scaredy little bitch. These explanations are so rational that I can almost bring myself to believe them. Thing is, I'm on the bus to work now to start the next shift. Has anyone got any idea what might be in that beetle bin that stinks so horribly? Ideally, I don't want to hear suggestions about severed limbs or dead kids. I'd feel a lot better if I knew what to tell the janitors, so they take it away ASAP. If anyone's come across anything like this before, please let me know if you can. Thanks for reading. Once again, sorry for any typos. I'm writing this on my phone. I'll post an update tomorrow sometime if anything else weird happens. I consider myself quite cultured for a white Midwesterner, even though I've never left the country, learned a language beyond Pig Latin, or tried many foreign dishes. But if you ask anyone from our side of the trailer park, they'll tell you we were a loud and loving bunch of hippies. My mom did an amazing job of introducing us to different cultures, ideas, races, and religions. The challenge was that there wasn't much diversity in our area, so we mostly explored these ideas through books, TV, local Native American powwows, and the eclectic and eccentric crowd at Midwestern music festivals. My mom often visited a quirky little shop called Strawberry Fields, overflowing with patchwork purses, tie-dye t-shirts, Grateful Dead tapestries, and a variety of paraphernalia labeled for tobacco only. Most of the time, she would go without all 6 of us kids, but she always returned with little gifts for each of us. My mom has a knack for finding small and unique treasures. She's loved surprising us with them for as long as I can remember. It's her love language. Once, she brought me home this little yellow box that was the size of a Hot Wheels car. It was in the shape of an oval and had little red and green symbols all over it. She wouldn't tell me what it was until I opened it. There was a little note folded up neatly, so I picked it up off the pile of miniature dolls. The little piece of paper explained how to use them. It read something along the lines of, "Tell all your worries to the worry dolls, place them under your pillow before bed, and when you wake up all of your worries will be gone." I remember picking up one of the little dolls, and my heart melted at the sight of them. They were no bigger than the tip of my index finger, and I was about 7 years old at the time. They were brightly colored, and they were so different from one another. I was in awe of how unique each of them were. I made sure to let my mom know how grateful I was, and I was ecstatic to use them that night. I loved whispering to my little dolls before going to sleep. I didn't do it every night, but I kept them on a shelf in my room and would pull them down when I felt it necessary. They were so small that they would easily get lost, eaten by pets, broken, etc. So my mom would replace them once every so often. I am now 24, and I honestly hadn't thought about them since 8th grade, when I decided I was too old for worry dolls. The magic of the dolls had died with the Tooth Fairy, Santa Claus, and the Easter Bunny. Instead of using them to cope with my negative thoughts, I decided it was time to use a diary in their place. It wasn't until I was at one of the local flea markets that I spotted a blue storage tub amongst all the faded baseball cards, random tools, and 3-decade-old Christmas decorations. It had a piece of printer paper duct taped to the front of it that read $0.50 bin, written with a Magnum Sharpie. My curiosity got the best of me, and I made my way over to the bin and crouched down to get a better look. Faded toys, a few crocheted oven mitts, a set of ugly clip-on earrings, and 3 packages of unopened worry dolls. I felt the nostalgia flood through me, and a smile spread across my face. I grabbed all 3 from the box and paid the vendor $1.50 for the bunch. I didn't need 3 boxes of worry dolls, of course, but I thought it would be a fun surprise for my mom and little sister. We have family dinners most Tuesday nights, so I kept them in my glove box until the next get-together. They were both happy to see the little dolls again. They didn't even need to open the box to know what they were, but they did anyway because we loved seeing each unique doll. They opened them up and neatly laid them side by side in a row on the kitchen table. There was one with a striped skirt and a purple shirt, another with a blue dress and a yellow poncho, and a few little guys with pants and t-shirts. They all had the same black hair that was made out of sand and black paint, but all uniquely designed. They thanked me for the gifts, and we all promised to try them out that night to see if they really worked. I went home that night and opened my package that had been sitting in the car for 2 days at this point. I placed the yellow box on the side table next to the bed and stared at it with a sentimental smile as I thought about what I might tell the dolls about. I carefully took the lid off, grabbing both sides with my thumb and index finger. I dumped the contents of the box out on the nightstand and quickly noticed that something was off. I flinched because I thought whatever was inside was some kind of creature. I know that sounds crazy, but the meaty-sounding thud it made when it hit the wood was disturbing. I just stared at the thing for about 30 seconds to make sure it wasn't going to move. Slowly, I sat back up and nudged it so that its face was upward. This didn't help my growing anxiety by any means. Yeah, it resembled a worry doll, but it was thick, dark, and sickly looking. The usual sand and paint that was used for the hair was replaced by a little tuft of what looked like real hair from a human or an animal. Its little outfit was not colorful, but a black cloak that covered its whole body and was made of some woven fabric similar to what is normally used for these kinds of dolls. The most disturbing thing was the face. Rather than having eyes and a mouth painted with black ink, it appeared as if someone had hollowed out the features from a piece of ham. The color resembled pale skin, with thin, vein-like patterns running across it. My brow furrowed in confusion and disgust. Why did mine look like that? Both my mom and my sister had completely normal dolls. Instead of touching it, I decided to take a picture to send to my sister. I wanted to get her thoughts, and maybe even joke about how creepy it was. I pulled my phone out and opened up the camera. I leaned over the doll and snapped a few pics before switching over to our messages. When I pulled up the photo tab, the pictures I had just taken weren't there. It was like I had never taken them. I backed out to make sure they weren't in my camera roll and possibly not loading, but they weren't there either. Not even in my recently deleted. I tried again to take the picture, but this time I did it in the message app. The picture took, but it was really bright, like someone was shining an industrial flashlight at the thing. I still tried to send the picture, but it just kept giving me an error message. I gave up, believing my phone needed an update or something, but I was too lazy to check and was honestly more interested in the thing sitting in front of me. I finally decided that it was harmless because it hadn't moved or anything. It just creeped me out in my quiet house. I slowly reached out to grab the doll while unconsciously holding my breath. I brought the doll closer to my face and examined it closer. I remember saying, "You're a creepy little thing," with a grimace on my face. It was such an odd thing, and I wondered why only my box had one doll that was bigger than normal. I thought maybe it was some kind of special edition thing, but realized that would be really weird considering they weren't necessarily a hot commodity. Who would seek out a special edition worry doll? I decided it was best to stop asking questions and just try to use the thing, like I had promised my mom and sister. I thought maybe the doll would grow on me eventually, considering I have a soft spot for horror movies and creepy props. I set the doll down for a moment to get comfortable under the covers before holding it up in front of me. I thought for a moment and decided I'd just share one worry. It was only one doll after all, and generally you tell one worry to one doll. That's why they tend to come in groups or pairs. I spoke the words out loud. I just want a fulfilling job. I had recently gotten a job as a dental assistant with a well-known dental corporation. They paid well over the normal wage for assistants in my area, but the dentist was a terror. I assumed they needed to put someone in golden handcuffs so they could keep their turnover rates under control. Dr. Selepka. He was a large and imposing man who was horrible to his patients and his staff. He would grab us by the arm forcefully if we weren't looking in the mouth at the right angle. He would forcefully shove patients' heads back on the chair before doing any exam. Other times he would get in screaming matches with other male patients who wouldn't put up with his shit. All that being said, it had only been 2 months, but I was losing my mind with this disgusting excuse for a man. I came home in tears on a daily basis for a plethora of reasons. This doll thing was worth a shot at least, even if to just say the words out loud. Speaking your intentions, as they say. I tucked the oddly textured doll under my pillow and snuggled into bed. It didn't take long for me to fall into a deep sleep. I slept like a rock. It was one of those sleeps that makes you feel like you time traveled to the next day. I woke up in the same position that I fell asleep in, which made my body so sore. I rolled out of bed, groaning and rubbing my stiff muscles. I had honestly had enough of this job, and just whispering to the little doll about my worries kind of made me realize how badly things had gotten. I wasn't going to quit right now, because I needed the money, but I figured it would be fine to call in for just one day. It was a Friday, so I decided to give myself a 3-day weekend. My mental health needed a break. I sent a half-hearted excuse about not feeling well, and got a half-hearted feel better from my manager. I started my morning like any other weekend. Freshen up, coffee, comfy clothes, YouTube. I plopped down on the couch and turned on my favorite podcast before deciding I should call my sister to fill her in on everything. I held down the power button to activate Siri and said, "Call Sissy's FaceTime." I waited for a moment before she answered. The sound of screeching children in the background filled my living room. "Hunter, stop hitting your brother," she shouted before turning her attention to me. "Sorry, what's up?" she said with an exhausted smile. "Sorry to bug you. I just wanted to tell you about what happened last night. You know those worry dolls I got us?" "Yeah." "Well, mine looks super weird," I said with a nervous giggle. "What do you mean?" she asked, raising an eyebrow. "There was only one doll, and it's really weird looking. It's bigger than normal and feels fleshy. It looks like something from a horror prop store." "Let me see," she said, looking more disturbed than before. "I tried sending pics last night, but they wouldn't load or take. I'll see if I can get it to work." I flipped my camera to face the floor as I got off the couch and walked to my bedroom. I grabbed the corner of my pillow and flipped it up for dramatic effect, but paused. The doll was gone. My sister didn't say anything for a second, most likely confused. Bro, I swear to God I put it under my pillow before bed. Check under your bed, or maybe you kicked it under the sheets somehow. I tore my bed apart looking for the silly thing, but there was nothing. Hey, let me call you back, I said before hanging up abruptly. I turned over to my side table and grabbed the little yellow box. It had weight again. Maybe I put it in here and didn't remember, I thought to myself. I took the lid off and was astonished to see a completely new doll sitting inside. She was dressed in a similar black cloth, but wore a little black flower crown on her head. There was a miniature skull placed right in the center of the crown. Her hair also appeared to be from a living thing, not sure what, but her bangs were much more well kept than the last doll. A straight across cut, each black hair in its place. The thing that really creeped me out was her face. She had the same hollowed out eyes, but her expression wasn't blank. She was frowning and crying tears of blood. I instinctively lifted my index finger to touch the blood. It was wet, fresh red blood dripping from her right eye and pooling in the other. I whimpered and set it back down. What the fuck? I whispered to myself. I couldn't help but wonder if this was some sort of prank. The only problem with that is, I don't have many friends outside of my immediate family. My mom has never been into pranks. In fact, she got pretty upset the few times we ever pulled any on her as kids. My sister was busy raising 2 kids and lived at least 45 minutes away. My other siblings didn't reach out much, so I was stumped. I decided that this must be something supernatural. And I know most people would look for any other explanation, but like I said before, I was raised around some of the most eccentric people you could imagine. I am a believer in the paranormal, at the very least. I paced from the living room to the bedroom, periodically checking to see if it moved at all. It stayed put as my mind raced. A few moments into my panicked pacing, my phone rang. The caller ID read Addie, my boss's name. I rolled my eyes, realizing she was probably going to beg me to come in or something stupid. I answered anyway, because I'm a pushover. Hey, I said, trying to mimic a tired, sick person. Hey girl. The sounds of smacking gum violated my ears. Something crazy just happened. My brow furrowed in confusion, although I knew she couldn't see it. What? Dr. Selepka died this morning, she stated bluntly, as if she was telling me what she ate for lunch. What? What how? I sputtered in shock. Jane found him in his pool. Apparently it was pretty bad. His guts were everywhere like an animal attack or something. Jane was the dental hygienist that the doctor had been hooking up with in private, but it was no secret. They rode to work together every morning and went out for drinks nearly every night. Oh my God, that's insane, Addie. Is Jane okay? I asked, very concerned about her mental state after seeing something so gruesome. She was pretty freaked out when she called me, but she said she's still coming in on Monday. I scoffed at her disregard for the situation. Okay, Addie, I'm still not feeling well, so I'm gonna go rest up so I can be there Monday too. I retorted passive-aggressively, knowing she wouldn't even catch it. I hung up before she could respond and sat down on the couch with my head in my hands. Images of Dr. Selepka's dead body kept flashing in my mind. I hadn't seen it, of course, but my mind painted me a pretty vivid picture regardless of if I wanted to see it. I hated the man with a burning passion, but this was insane. My mind couldn't help but wonder if the doll had played a part in this, or if it was just some crazy coincidence. I decided it was the latter. Before I went to sleep that night, I decided to put the lid back on the box. I placed it on the top of my bookshelf. Out of sight, out of mind. That night I had some of the most vivid dreams I had ever experienced in my life. They all related to yesterday's events, but it was in such a positive light. I dreamt about what work might be like without him around. I imagined how much anger and negativity had left the world with just one person. It made me feel happy. The whole time it felt like I had taken ecstasy. It was an intoxicating feeling that I was honestly sad to wake up from. When I woke up that morning, I felt so refreshed, like someone had washed my brain with sunshine and cool water. I smiled as I did my weekend, morning routine, and found myself humming and bouncing around the house. When I turned the TV on to YouTube, I saw one of my favorite true crime channels had posted a video. Something about the title made me remember what had happened the day before. My heart sank for half a second, but it dissipated quickly. It's like my brain knew it didn't want to feel sorry. A part of me felt like it was my fault, and I was somehow proud of it. It makes my skin crawl just thinking about it now. As of now, I will keep the doll on the shelf until I get some suggestions as to what I should do. Does anyone have experience with these specific types of dolls? I'll link some drawings I made of the dolls, so you can get an idea of what they look like. Any advice would be appreciated, so thank you in advance. Until next time. My dog Max is almost 6 years now. He's always been a calm, easygoing boy. The kind of dog who lets you know if someone's at the door, then flops down for a belly rub once you tell him everything's fine. He's never been much of a barker, and I've always taken it as a good sign that he only makes noise when there's a reason. That's why I couldn't ignore it when the barking started. It was about a month ago, always around 2 or 3 in the morning. I'd be just about asleep, and suddenly Max would go off, sharp and frantic. Not as usual, someone's walking past bark. This was desperate, panicked, the kind of bark that makes your stomach drop before you even know why. Every time, I'd get up, check the windows, check the front yard, even the backyard. There was never anything there. No animals, no branches tapping the glass, nothing out of place. Still, Max would stand stiff-legged at the back door, barking at the dining room window like his life depended on it. I tried everything, closing the curtains, leaving a light on, sitting with him until he calmed down. But no matter what I did, as soon as I went back upstairs, the barking would start again, sharp bursts, then long pauses, like he was waiting for something to move. I kept telling myself it was a fox or some stray cat he could smell, something out there I just couldn't see. But Max wasn't barking at the yard. He was barking at the window itself. 2 weeks in, I was wrecked. 3 hours of sleep a night, if I was lucky. I was barely functioning at work, and at home, I was starting to flinch at every creak the house made. Even during the day, Max would drift over to the dining room, stare at the curtains, then wander away again like he was expecting something to be there. Then one night I forgot to draw the dining room curtains before bed. I'd been too tired after a long shift at work, and it slipped my mind. When the barking started around 2 a.m., I was already half awake. I was halfway down the stairs before I realized the house felt colder than usual. Max was standing in the middle of the living room, completely still, body tense, ears flat against his head. His whole body was rigid, but his mouth was shut. Instead, a low growl rolled from his chest, deep enough that I felt it more than heard it. I followed his gaze. There was a face in the dining room window. It was pressed against the glass, just inches away, too pale, the skin stretched too tightly over the bones beneath. But it was the eyes that stopped me cold. They weren't just staring into the house, they were locked directly on me. Wide, bulging, too round for the face they were set in. The whites seemed almost gray, veined with something darker, and the irises were a washed-out yellow, like old paper left in the sun too long. They didn't blink, didn't move, just held my eyes in place like it was waiting to see if I'd come closer. The mouth was stretched into something almost like a smile, but too eager, too sharp at the edges, like it was trying to mimic a human expression but couldn't quite get it right. Max let out another low growl, louder this time, vibrating in the space between us, and I broke. My hand slammed into the light switch, and the second the room flooded with light, the face was gone. I ran outside, barefoot, heart pounding so hard I felt it in my throat. The yard was empty. The street was still. No footprints, no sign anyone had been there. Just silence, thick, heavy silence, and the cold, damp air clinging to my skin. When I came back inside, Max hadn't moved. He was still standing there, trembling all over, eyes locked on the window, even though the curtain was now drawn. It took me 3 tries to get him to follow me upstairs, and even then, he only came because I begged him. That was 2 weeks ago. Max hasn't barked at night since. In fact, he won't go near that window anymore. During the day, he gives it a wide berth, skirting around the edges of the room like something's still there, even though I can't see a thing. At night, the curtains stay drawn. They always will now. And I'll never forget to draw them again. I don't have much time. It started 3 days ago. I was driving home late, exhausted, trying to keep my eyes open. Normally, I take the highway, but I was desperate to get home faster. There was this old side road, one I'd never noticed before. It wasn't on my GPS. No street signs, just a dark, endless stretch of pavement cutting through the woods. I turned onto it. Biggest mistake of my life. At first, it was just quiet. Too quiet. No cars. No lights. Just the hum of my engine and the faint crackle of my radio. Then my headlights flickered. The static on the radio got louder. And then, everything blinked. 1 second, it was midnight. The next, it was daytime. I slammed on the brakes, my pulse hammering. The road looked different. The trees were smaller. The sky was a hazy, washed-out blue. I grabbed my phone, no service. The date on the screen, April 14th, 1994. I was 30 years in the past. I didn't understand what was happening. My brain refused to process it. I needed help, so I drove. I followed the road until I reached a gas station. It looked old, like something out of a faded photograph. The prices on the sign were too low. The cars in the lot looked like they belonged in a museum. I pulled up to the pump. A man in his 30s, wearing a uniform from a gas station that hadn't existed in years, came out. He gave me a weird look. "You lost, kid?" he asked. Yeah, I think so." He leaned in closer. "You know this road doesn't lead anywhere anymore, right? You're in the past." His voice made my stomach drop. "What?" I said, thinking it was a joke. "You didn't see the sign? The one you passed a while ago," he said, pointing back in the direction I came from. "This road was shut down in 1994. No one uses it now." I laughed nervously. "Okay, look, I don't know what's going on, but I need to get home." I didn't wait for him to say anything else. I turned around and drove off, feeling more panicked with each passing second. But the weirdest part? The gas station wasn't on the road anymore. It had just vanished. It was like it was never there. The pavement was completely different, like the past was fading right in front of me. And then I felt it. My hand started to feel lighter, like it was flickering. I blinked and tried to shake it off. I wasn't imagining it. By the time I got back to the highway, my car was shaking. That's when I saw it. A version of me was driving ahead of me. Same car, same everything. I honked the horn, but the version of me in front didn't react. I drove faster to catch up, but when I passed him, I noticed something that made my heart stop. He wasn't driving. It was me, but not the me I knew. He looked wrong. His face was a blur, like he was struggling to exist, like he was about to be erased. I screamed, and that's when my car, slipped off the road, and everything went black. I woke up in my own bed. My room was exactly how it was before. No more gas station. No more past. But now I'm fading. I can see my arm, my leg, everything slowly becoming see-through. I can't tell if this is the end, or if I've slipped into another part of the loop. I don't know if I'm going to fade away completely, but I have to keep moving, keep writing. Before I'm nothing. It's hard to describe an impulse with words. By definition, it's an unreflective urge, an overwhelming feeling that compels action, disentangled from the stickiness of logic and forethought. For example, I couldn't verbalize exactly why I had slammed the key to my Dodge Pontiac through the soft flesh under the security guard's mandible, other than the painting relieved my headache and he was trying to pull me away from it. But the investigating officer had already dismissed that explanation as unsatisfactory. But that's the truth I had access to at that moment. After what felt like the 40th time he asked, all I could do was shrug. The resurrection of my lifelong headache wasn't doing me any favors either. As soon as my eyes left the painting, the pain came crashing back. It felt like my entire skull had its own pulse. A paralysis-inducing ache I was all too familiar with. This searing misery has been my stalwart companion for about 15 years. An undiagnosed migraine disorder that started when I was 3. Every doctor's visit would begin with a review of my family history. No migraines on my dad's side, and my mother deserted the both of us when I was a toddler. Left in the middle of the night, no note. According to my father, she was never very forthcoming about her medical history either. We both assumed I inherited this curse from her. No scan of my brain ever revealed deformity or dysfunction. The pain was not an atypical seizure. As far as Western medicine could tell, I was healthy as a horse. Psychiatrists blame subconscious trauma from abandonment, but it's not like antidepressants lessen the pain either. I've learned to live with it, even weather bad dates through it. I'd never been to a museum before today. Dad always made it seem incredibly dull. A waste of time for people that had nothing better to do. The one time my school went on a field trip to a local museum, Dad forbade me from going. Weird in retrospect, but at the age of 9, I was just happy to miss a day of school. Today, my boyfriend insisted we go, and I simply didn't have the energy to argue. I figured Dad would say I couldn't go, and that would be that. To my surprise, that isn't what he said at all. Sure, honey. I think today is the perfect day, actually. Dad was right. The experience was an absolute slog. Excluding the aforementioned miracle painting, of course. When my eyes were pointed in its direction, regardless of distance, the pain lessened. I wasn't even consciously looking at it in the beginning. Instead, unexpected relief magnetized my body, guiding me through the labyrinthine halls until I found myself right in front of it, basking in the intoxication of relief. Transfixed, I stood motionless. It was a small, square watercolor, each side only a half a foot long, unassuming to everyone but me. I couldn't tell precisely what the composition depicted. The canvas was a maelstrom of color, a surface completely consumed by a veritable tempest of animated pigment. I couldn't believe the eroded wooden frame was able to hold the vast, cyclonic energy contained within. At any moment, it felt like the piece's color could rupture its meager cage and explode out into the surrounding museum, swallowing its patrons in a rushing wave of indigo and crimson. As I stared, the hypnotic swirls gave me more respite than morphine ever did. The plaque next to the painting read, "My Last Red Cradle Asterisk, by Dupuy Asterisk." Considered by many to be the last great work of modernism, it is said the architecture of an umbilical cord inspired this haunting piece. When asked about the painting, Ms. Dupuy responded with this cryptic message: "Meaningful art is inevitably built on sacrifice. Desperation is the canvas. Blood is the paint. When it's finally time to become legion, do not be afraid to give in." I didn't even register that my nose was touching the canvas until after I impulsively pushed blunt metal through that man's jaw. As another example of an impulse, when the guard let go of me, I reflexively jumped between him and the painting to shield it from the ensuing blood sprays. I didn't know why I cared about protecting the canvas, but in that moment, nothing was more important to me. Not to say impulses are arbitrary. It's more that you may not have a perfect understanding of what's driving your actions at first. As soon as I made bail and got my phone back, I sprinted to my car and hopped in, my eyes glued to the screen as I searched online for the painting. It didn't take long to find it, but it didn't work like the original in the museum, either. No matter how large I made it on the screen, no matter what resolution the picture was, it didn't provide me with an ounce of relief. Instead, pain and frustration danced hectic circles against the rim of my skull, and I almost broke down completely. Before I could erupt, however, I noticed something on the screen that gave me pause. A familiarity of sorts. The artist, Dupuy, looked a hell of a lot like me. When I got home, I confronted my dad with what I found. Dupuy, he informed me, is my mother's maiden name. He had known this entire time where she'd been, and what she had been doing, and chose not to tell me. His words, not mine. Suddenly my headache roared, louder and fiercer than it ever had in the past. My knees buckled from the discomfort, and I fell to the floor. As Dad bent over me, I felt my teeth reach for his neck, guided by the same relieving magnetism I experienced with the painting in the museum. Before I could sink my canines into him, however, I stopped myself, my mind pushing back against the new and deadly impulse. I didn't want to hurt him. To my confusion, Dad didn't move away as I rested my teeth on his neck, fighting to keep my jaw open. If I bit down, he was dead, but Dad didn't move an inch. He waited, patient and understanding. After about a minute of that horrible standstill, he finally spoke. As he did, I could feel the subtle pulsations of blood swimming through his jugular vein under my upper lip. "Do it, Felicity. This is what we've all been waiting for. Turn your suffering into purpose. Your desperation, the canvas. With my blood, you can paint the red cradle. Go be with your mother. You've earned it." It took every bit of willpower I had, but I pulled myself away from my father. Slowly, I lifted my teeth from his neck and took a few steps back. For the first time, I refused to give in to impulse. Nothing, not even the gut-wrenching pain, would control me like that. In response, Dad slumped to the kitchen floor, letting his head rest awkwardly against the oven once he was on his back. He was silent for a moment, then his voice exploded with laughter. Between bouts of cackling, I heard him say, "What an absolute waste. Ms. Dupuy is going to be so angry." As his laughing continued, strained and maniacal, blood started flowing down from the corners of his eyes. It wasn't like crying, the stream was too quick. Unnaturally forceful, too. Pressurized to the point where it made an audible hissing sound as it poured from his tear ducts. As more and more blood escaped, the whites of his eyes became pitch black, and his skin seemed to liquefy like candle wax. When the blood hit the floor, it didn't just form a puddle either. Instead, the liquid kept its rapid pace and started moving towards me, chasing closely behind my footfalls as I sprinted out the door. Stepping into the car, I watched a horde of crimson streaks spill over the door frame, and I heard Dad screaming something in a language I didn't recognize. The same few nonsense words, deep and guttural, over and over and over again. I'm holed up in a motel on the edge of town as I type this, trying to put it all together. My boyfriend is on his way over, and I'm not sure he'll believe me when I tell him what happened. I don't think that man was my real father. Dupuy may be my mother, though. As much as I want it not to be true, it feels right. I'm trying not to give in to the pain. My skull is absolutely pounding, though. That said, I've noticed something new about the pain as well. It's almost become like a compass. When I turn my head, the pain doesn't stay in the same place. Instead, it moves the exact opposite way, making sure it's always pointed in the same direction, regardless of how my head is positioned. Some infernal weather vane buried deep within my psyche. My impulse is to follow the pain wherever it leads me. As much as I don't want to give in, I feel my resistance wavering, worn down by years of searing torment. What in God's name am I? Is there a point in resistance, or am I just delaying the inevitable? Does anyone know what this all means? I stepped into the black building, my girlfriend by my side. The lights were dim as we headed for the elevator. I briefly recalled what she said earlier about this city having a lot of haunted buildings, but tried to set that thought aside. "So, you guys do this a lot?" I asked. "Yeah, it's a very popular activity," my girlfriend said cheerfully. The elevator stopped on the 4th floor, and we stepped out. Walking down dimly lit corridors, we arrived at room 414. We stepped inside, and my girlfriend smiled from ear to ear. All her friends were inside, and she hadn't seen them for quite some time. This was also my first time meeting them. Happiness filled the air, and beer bottles filled the tables. I met her cousin. He was a pretty cool guy. We communicated through translator apps. Despite the language barrier, I still felt that I got along with him well. Some people just give off a good vibe. The strobe lights in the room danced as they gleefully sang along to their favorite songs. I couldn't really participate, but I still had a good time regardless. After all, it was a new experience for me. I did sing some duets with my girlfriend when she'd occasionally pick an English pop song. I had no musical talent, so it was slightly embarrassing, but I'll get over it. After a while, I had to go to the bathroom. I had no clue where it was, so I asked my girlfriend to go with me. We walked down a few hallways until we found it. I took her with me because I was afraid I would get lost going back to the room. I'm very directionally impaired. That is, in fact, what happened. When I was done, I stepped outside the restroom. I waited around for a little bit for my girlfriend. And after a few minutes, I decided she must have gone back to the room. I wandered the halls, but I got turned around. All the rooms looked the same to me. I couldn't seem to figure out which way I came from. As I wandered the halls, I noticed how quiet it is. Before, I could hear plenty of people singing from different rooms. And speaking of people, I hadn't seen anybody this entire time I've been walking about, until I turned the corner. Rounding the corner in a panic, I completely stopped in my tracks. Standing at the edge of the hallway was a man. He was dressed normally, and everything about him appeared normal, except he stared. Eyes completely open, just staring. A chill ran down my spine. I did not want to go near him. In a daze, I stepped into a random room. Sitting on the furniture were these strange things. I think they wore masks or some sort of costume, but the facial expressions were far too realistic. It was uncanny. They were pale white, covered in fur, and they wore suits. Their faces were cat-like. The way they stared, it was pure disdain. I felt like a bug just waited to be squashed. Slamming the door, I ran back the other way and finally had some luck. I noticed the door I had just exited was room 416, so I darted down towards room 414. Yanking the door open, I was met with an empty room. No sign of anybody even having been here. No beer bottles, no food. Even my jacket I had left in the chair was gone. Puzzled, I frantically pondered what to do when I noticed something on the screen. A timer with no set number. I looked over at the door. Peering in the small window was that man from before. I heard the door lock from the outside. The man in the window looked at me. I watched his gaze shift, transfixing on the screen before me. He kept moving his head, motioning towards it. Why was he motioning towards the TV? What was up with the infinite timer on the screen? The strange man continued to motion towards the television. I eventually got the message. I selected a song and nervously began to sing. My eyes shifted back and forth to the man. He looked pleased now. A smile appeared on his face. After the song finished, the screen changed. The timer blinked. It now read 1 million. I had no idea how I ended up in this predicament, but I understood what I had to do. I continued singing, song after song. The whole time, the man watched in glee. It was strange. I never grew hungry or needed to use the bathroom. It was as if I was frozen in time. This continued for ages. I soon came to realize Those numbers represented years. If ever I stopped, the timer paused too. I had to keep singing if I ever wanted to get out of here. I sang for longer than any human has ever been alive. For longer than any human civilization has lasted. I felt enraged at the scenario. I'd often daydreamed of being able to just freeze everything and read my books. Having all the time in the world, this would have been the perfect opportunity. But instead I was forced to sing karaoke songs by myself. I've sung and memorized every popular song possibly ever released. At least at the time of my imprisonment. I've learned every main language in the world and can speak them fluently. I had to find some way to bide the time besides just singing after all. I'd sing a song in a language I didn't know for years, and then switch to an English version of the same song. I'd perfected my singing chops too. I could sing and rap flawlessly. After longer than anyone could even dream of, I was done. "Hey babe, you were in the bathroom a long time. Are you okay?" My girlfriend said with a concerned look on her face. One look at her, and I started bawling. I wrapped my arms around her and hugged her tight. She would never know what I'd experienced. I couldn't tell her. How would she believe me? And if she did believe me, I didn't want to break her spirit. She was the most positive person I knew. I had to move on somehow. But I live in fear. It may seem like I can live a wonderful life, having possibly the most beautiful singing voice in human history, and knowing so many languages. It would seem that I can do anything I set my mind to at this point. But everywhere I look, around every corner, I still see that man. Those eyes peering at me when I'm not looking. I'll never escape them.